Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Woodstock City Council, January 16th, 2025. Was just reminded this will be our first meeting of 20 this year of 2025. This hybrid meeting is being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel and recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the agendas, meetings, and minutes page of the city's website. And all councilors are in attendance tonight, so no virtual attendance. We did have a closed session of council that started at 6 o'clock this evening that ended at 6:32. Next up, any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Councillor Tate.
I, Councillor Deb Tate, declare the following potential indirect pecuniary interests. Agenda item number closed session item 4.1, subject matter legal opinion. A member of my immediate family has a direct pecuniary interest in the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I, Councillor Bernie Martin, declare the following indirect pecuniary interest. Agenda item number 9E, subject matter OP 24-12-8 and ZN 824-22, application for official plan amendment and zone change at 747 Pavey Street, Inc., on the basis that I have a current business relationship with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leatherborough.
I have two. So the first is I, Councillor Kate Leatherborough, declare the following potential direct pecuniary interest. Agenda item number closed session item 4.1, subject matter legal opinion. And my second is I, Councillor Kate Leatherborough, declare the following potential direct pecuniary interest. Agenda item number 14E1, subject matter approval to renew a shared service agreement with the downtown Woodstock business improvement area. General nature of the interest, I operate a business in the BIA district.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Any disclosure of new business? Matters arising from the minutes? And now the minutes. Councillor Schanberg.
Moved by Councillor Schattenberg, seconded by Councillor Wismer-Vermeer, that the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on December 12th, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you. Any questions with that? We'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. We do have an additions to the agenda. Councillor Schanberg.
Yeah, moved by Councillor Schattenberg and is seconded by Councillor Lauder that the following items be added to the agenda. Delegation item 8B, Richard Kelly Roots, GSP Group, OP 24-04-8, ZN 8-24-10, application for official plan amendment and zone change for 394, 400, 408, and 412 Norwich Ave. And also delegation item 8C, Scott Johnson, OP 24-04-8, ZN 8-24-10, application for official plan amendment and zone change for 394, 400, 408, and 412 Norwich Ave.
Thank you. Any issues or questions with those? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. No presentations, but we do have some delegations tonight. And to all the delegations, I'd just like to remind you 5 minutes for your delegation. Of course, then we'll open it up to see if council has any questions. So first up, we have 8A, Mark Burke on application B 24-09-8 and A 24-04-8, application for consent and minor variance. Welcome.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. And I couldn't attend the public meeting, so I just wanted to be here to answer any questions that council might have about the application.
Thank you. Anyone have questions on that one? And that, of course, we're talking about 306 Queen Street. Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you.
No resolution is required as this refers to consideration of planning reports, item 9B. So next up, 8B, Richard Kelly Roots from GSP Group on OP 24-04-8 and ZN 8-24-10 for Norwich Avenue. Welcome.
Thank you. Just get the clerk to share the screen. That'd be great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good evening, council members and members of the public. My name is Richard Kelly Ritz. I'm a planner with GSP Group, and I'm here representing our client, Key Change Real Estate Developments, for our official plan and zone change application at 394 to 412 Norwich Avenue. Our client, Mr. John Crocker, is here in attendance as well. He's sitting in the second row, and him and I are available for any questions throughout the evening on this application. Just wanted to circle back following my presentation on Monday at the public meeting. I'm not going to duplicate too many of those speaking points, but just wanted to follow up on a couple specific items that were raised at that meeting. So just as a reminder for members of council, the application before you this evening is for a zone change and official plan amendment for a 32-unit stacked townhouse development on Norwich Avenue. And I'm going to touch on three main points that were raised at Monday's public meeting. The first is related to grading and drainage. The second is related to the building elevations, so what the building is going to look like from Norwich Avenue. And then the third is related to privacy. So starting off related to grading and drainage. So one of the comments that was raised at Monday's meeting was just some questions around when it rains on the property post-development, will there be rainwater runoff from the parking lot, from the new pavement surfaces added to the property that will impact the surrounding residential neighbors? So just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So this week we had a chance to confirm with MTE, the project engineer, and just get a little bit more details on that. So one of the items that came up as well on Monday's meeting was that this site and others in this block are quite a bit lower currently than Norwich Avenue. There's about a 1 or 2 meter grade difference throughout the property. So today, when it rains on this property, like the rainwater is directed only to surrounding residential properties. There's no way for it to be directly sent out to any streets just because it's lower. So one of the opportunities that there is through redevelopment of this site is to really just kind of start the grading from scratch and look at it new. So one of the key parts of this development is that the grade is going to be raised on the property. It's going to be raised at the front to be even roughly with Norwich Avenue. So I'm just kind of circling on the screen here. So that'll be raised to be level kind of with the sidewalk and the road. The back will be raised as well. And what that will mean is that almost all of the rainwater during storms and whatnot on this site will be directed out to the road versus to neighboring properties. And so what that means is that the site will be designed to see a at least a 95% reduction in rainwater that goes to neighbors' properties, and all that will be now directed towards the road instead. So yeah, that covers a little bit just kind of grading and drainage. The second item relates to what the building will look like from Norwich Avenue, whether it be a 3-story building appearance. So the building is 3 stories plus a basement. So this week we got some front elevations from the project architect just to visualize that a little bit more. So you can see here, this is from Norwich Avenue looking at the site. You can see it's got kind of a 3-story appearance. You can see the basement units just poking out a little bit there at the bottom. So that will be what it will look like from Norwich Avenue. The back of the site, as I mentioned, the grades back there will be a little bit lower. So the basements will come out a little bit more at the back. So yeah, just wanted to share that as well with members of council this evening. And that kind of ties into the third piece that I wanted to touch on related to privacy. So one of the comments that was raised by a nearby resident was just around impacts to their property from these new units being added. And so a couple thoughts to share with that is the first one is that the building footprint has been pushed up to Norwich as much as possible to try and enable some privacy from surrounding properties. So for example, the rear yard setback, so how far the back of the building is from the back property line, the standard requirement in the zoning bylaws, about 7.5 meters. This is proposing to be about 23 meters, so just under 80 feet. So the hope is that that can really help address some of those privacy concerns. The other piece that I'll add, and I was discussing with our client this week, is they'd be prepared to add a privacy kind of wood fence around the property that could be the highest permitted by municipal standards. I'll let staff confirm on what that height would be, but typically be around 8 feet for a kind of an extra high fence. So just wanted to share that commitment as well, to hopefully address some of those privacy concerns that were raised on Monday. So yeah, with that, I'm again available for any questions. I'll also reiterate that this is the zone change and official plan before council this evening is really just the first step in the process. There's still site plan review to come, building permit, and myself as the planner for our client, and our client is very committed to making a very strong development here along Norwich Avenue, and happy to work with council staff, surrounding residents as they bring forward their development. With that, thank you for your time and available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Kelly Ritz, or Mr. Crocker reached out earlier and said he'd be willing to take any as applicant, so council is aware. Any questions for either one of them? Seeing none. Well, thank you very much for being here and presenting. No resolution is required, as this refers to consideration of planning reports, item number 9D. So moving along, 8C, Scott Johnson, which is OP 24-04-8, ZN 8-24-10, in reference to Norwich Avenue. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to raise some of my concerns. Some of them I did raise a little bit Tuesday, but I got a few more details that I'd like to bring forward tonight. First and foremost is I feel that proposed development in this area is entirely too large for that particular area. That area is all detached, single, two-story houses, and this is going to look very much out of place in that area. This area is backing onto a calm residential area. Our road right behind it is a dead-end road, so it's very calm and very little noise. I know Norwich is on the other side, but there's very little noise to get to us. With this new development, there's now going to be a parking lot directly in our backyards. There'll be the noise of all those cars coming in and out, doors slamming, people coming in and out throughout the days. This development is going to get rid of a lot of existing greenery in that area. There's a nice little small bush in the corner with some pine trees, some oak, walnut trees. And based on what we see on the proposal, all that is going to come out and get rid of a lot of green space. Right now, if you go into my backyard and you look across to where those houses are today, as they were saying, they do go up in elevation. So when you're standing in my backyard, you can see the at your eye level, you see the foundation of the houses that are there today. As they confirmed tonight, they are going to have to raise that elevation a little bit more. And already between my land and the next lot, there is a foot gradient difference. So if they're going to have to raise that even more, that means there's going to be a large retaining wall now having to divide the lots, which with prevailing west winds will cause more snow than today will build up, and I'll have an even worse water issue than I do. And my neighbors as well. So that's going to affect our being able to put in our gardens and being able to get out early in the spring to cut grass and things. The other concern with that is if that is enough water with the snow belt, will it raise high enough to now start intruding into our homes? Because we have basements and it'll come back. So their new building is going to be high enough. They probably won't have a problem with it, but with our low basements, low land, will we get water in our basements? One of the other concerns we have is with the size of the paper and lot is just snow storage. So there's very little green space, very little empty space there for snow in the winter. We've been very lucky this winter to not have much snow, but I know in other years we have had quite a bit. And it's hard to see in their plan where they're gonna be able to deal with the snow if it does come in that kind of capacity. Again, one of the questions that was raised on Tuesday that I know the mayor asked is, what is the assurance that this unit will stay at a 32 unit building? Looking at that design tonight, I can see how that could very easily, it appears today that with being a 32 unit, that each area is 2 stories, and I could see how that could very quickly change into a single story unit, which would then effectively double the units in that building. So I know the question was raised on Tuesday, but I felt that the answer that was given as an assurance was very not reassuring. There wasn't a firm way to say, no, in the future, we're not going to be able to change this. So will 32 cars, 32 and a half, 40 cars, all of us turn into 50, 60 cars and more people? I know a lot of people are probably thinking right now, this guy's just an MB, doesn't want it in his backyard. I truly understand the need for more housing. I was very lucky to buy my house at a very reasonable rate when I did get it. And I hope to be able to help a future family come in and buy my house when I'm ready to give it up at a very low rate. I think that there is ways this design could be changed. Maybe for smaller buildings that are duplexes or something like that, so it doesn't break up the road as much. Right now, it's gonna be one huge building in the middle of the road, where before it was a few small buildings. So I thank you very much for the time, and thank you for listening to my
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions for Mr. Johnson on this report? Councillor Shanberg.
Yeah, from the chair through to Mr. Johnson, I looked at your preliminary report that you sent to council as far as getting on the agenda. And it doesn't have your address in there, and I'm not sure you said your address in your speech.
apologies. 409 Powell.
Powell, that's what I was interested, if you were behind this complex or maybe the first house past the complex.
No,
Yeah.
right directly behind the complex. I think based on the plan, I'll be right in line with the proposed laneway.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, no resolutions required as this refers to consideration of planning reports, item 9D. So that brings us to consideration of planning reports. 9A, B 24-69-8 and A 24-19-8 for Tecumseh Street. Mr. Miller, welcome.
Good evening, council staff, members of the public. Application for consent and minor variance B 24-69-8, A 24-19-8 Oxford Business Solutions. The subject lands are described as part lot 22, concession 1, formerly in Blandford, parts 1 to 21, OXR 13A, and parts 1 to 7, 18 and 19, 41R 9639 in the city of Woodstock. The lands front onto the west side of Tecumseh Street between Van Sittert Avenue and Oxford Street and are municipally known as 307 and 313 Tecumseh Street. The subject lands are designated traditional industrial in the county's official plan and are zoned transitional industrial in the city's zoning bylaw. The intent of the application is to create one new 1.36 hectare vacant industrial lot and retain one 2.8 hectare lot for continued industrial use. The lot to be retained contains 2 industrial buildings and a parking lot, which will be retained. The lot to be severed is vacant and there are no plans for development at this time. The application for minor variance proposes relief from section 20.2 to reduce the minimum required lot frontage from 20 meters to 12.34 meters for the lands to be retained. With respect to the PPS, the proposal is consistent with the intensification and redevelopment policies as the application is considered an efficient use of land and municipal infrastructure within a service settlement area. With respect to the official plan policies for traditional industrial areas, staff are of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with the intent of these areas, which are planned for the full range of industrial activity, including light, medium, and heavy industrial uses. In consideration of the requested minor variance for a reduced lot frontage for the lot to be retained, staff have reviewed the proposal in the context of the policies that have been considered in the official plan, and consistent with the City of Woodstock Engineering Department are of the opinion that the proposed variance is appropriate. The proposed lot to be retained will be of an adequate size, provide sufficient setbacks for neighboring properties, and provide space for off-street parking for the existing uses. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed severances are requested are minor variance to meet the test outlined in section 45(1) of the Planning Act and can be supported. It's recommended that the City of Woodstock Council advise this Land Division Committee that it supports application A2469-8. And further, that it recommends that the City of Woodstock Council advise Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject lands subject to the 6 conditions in the report.
Thank you. Any questions through to the city planner? Seeing none, looking for a motion on the floor. Counselor Tate,
I'll move that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports application file A24-69-8 submitted by Oxford Business Solutions, Inc. for lands described as Part Lot 22, Concession 1, Blandford, Parts 1 to 21, OXR 113A, and Parts 1 to 7, 18 and 19, 41R-9639 in the City of Woodstock and known municipally as 307-313 Tumy Street as it relates to Section 20.2, Table 20.2, M4 zone provisions to reduce the minimum frontage of the lands to be retained from 20 meters to 12 meters. The recommended relief meets the 4 tests of a minor variance as set out in Section 41 of the Planning Act as outlined in the report, and further that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject lands subject conditions 1 through 6 outlined in the report.
thank you. Second by Counselor Leatherborough. Discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, 9B, B24-09-8 and A24-04-8, which is 306 Queen Street. Mr. Miller.
Application for consent and minor variance, B2409-8, A2404-8, in the name of Yankovic. The subject lands are described as Lot 8, south side of Queen Street, Block H, Plan 52 in the City of Woodstock. The lands are located on the southwest corner of Douglas Street and Queen Street and are municipally known as 306 Queen Street. The subject lands are designated low-density and residential in the county's official plan and are zoned residential R2 in the City of Woodstock zoning bylaw. The purpose of the application for consent is to create 1 new lot for residential purposes and retain a lot containing as duplex dwelling. A duplex is proposed to be constructed on the severed lands. The applicant is proposing to obtain relief from section 7.2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum lot area of the subject lands from 540 square meters to 278 square meters, to reduce the minimum lot frontage of lands to be severed from 18 meters to 11 meters, and to reduce the minimum lot depth of lands to be severed from 28 meters to 24.5 meters. The applicant also proposes to reduce the minimum rear yard depths of the lands to be retained from 7.5 meters to 5.5 meters, and to reduce the minimum required front yard depth on the lands to be retained from 6 meters to 2 meters. With respect to the PPS, the proposal is consistent with the intensification, redevelopment, and housing policies. The proposal is considered to be an efficient use of land and municipal infrastructure. With respect to the relevant policies of the official plan for low-density residential areas, staff are of the opinion that the proposed severance is appropriate form of street-oriented infill and intensification. Regarding the requested minor variances, staff have reviewed the proposal in the context of the policies contained in the official plan and are of the opinion that the proposed variances are appropriate. The proposed lot to be severed and the proposed lot to be retained are adequately sized, providing area for sufficient setbacks adjacent properties, uses, sufficient building envelope, and sufficient area for amenity space. More specifically, the proposed lot to be severed, the applicant has requested a minimum lot area of 278 square meters, a minimum lot frontage of 11 meters, a minimum lot depth of 24.5 meters. The applicant has indicated that they intend to construct a duplex dwelling split horizontally on the lands to be severed. A duplex dwelling in the R2 zone requires a minimum lot area of 540 square meters, and a single attached dwelling in the R2 zone requires a lot area of 290 square meters. Staff notes that the proposed duplex dwelling will result in a structure similar to a single detached dwelling in terms of building mass and appearance, and as the R2 zone permits an additional residential unit, which may encompass the entire basement of a single detached dwelling, the proposed duplex dwelling is similar to a single detached dwelling containing an ARU. Therefore, staff is of the opinion that the duplex dwelling on the lot to be severed, as proposed by the applicant, would be similar to a single attached dwelling with an ARU, and the request for a reduced lot area of 278 square meters is reasonable. The requested minimum lot frontage of 11 meters, where a minimum lot frontage of 18 meters is required for a duplex dwelling on the lands to be severed, is also considered in terms of the proposed footprint and building mass of a horizontally separated duplex dwelling as compared to a single attached dwelling with an ARU. In this case, as noted, the proposed horizontally separated duplex will be similar to an ARU, a single attached dwelling with an ARU in terms of overall footprint construction, where the minimum required frontage would be 9 meters in the R2 zone. Staff is of the opinion that the request for a reduced minimum lot frontage of 11 meters for a horizontally separate duplex as proposed by the applicant is reasonable. Staff is also of the opinion that the requested minimum lot depth of 24.5 meters, where a minimum lot depth of 28 meters is required, is reasonable, as it will result in a new lot line resulting from the severance and will still allow for an adequately sized lot. Regarding the proposed lot to be retained, the applicant has requested a minimum front yard depth of 2 meters, where a minimum front yard depth of 6 meters is required, and a minimum rear yard depth of 5 meters, where 7.5 meters is required. The requested relief for the front yard depth is to acknowledge the location of the existing dwelling and does not impact the proposed consent on the lands or the lot to be retained. The requested relief for the reduced rear yard depth is a result of a new lot line resulting from the consent, and staff are satisfied that sufficient amenity space will be available in the rear yard and for the lots to be severed and retained. Staff are satisfied that the proposed variances are minor and desirable for the development of the land and maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw with respect to the provision of adequately sized building envelopes and sufficient setbacks, amenity space, and space for off-street parking. Planning staff are of opinion that the proposed severance is appropriate form of street-oriented infill and intensification, and the requested minor variances meet the 4 tests of minor variance under the Planning Act and can be supported. As such, staff recommend that the City of Woodstock Council advise Land Division Committee that city supports application file A24048, and further, it is recommended the City of Woodstock Council advise Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject lands subject to conditions 1 through 5 in the report.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Miller? Seeing none, looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports application file A24-04-08 submitted by Zachary Yakovic for lands described as Lot 8S/S of Queen Street, Block H, Plan 52, City of Woodstock, and to be municipally known as 306 Queen Street as it relates to relief from Section 7.2, Table 7.2, R2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum required lot of the lot to be severed from 540 meters squared to 278 meters squared. Number 2, relief from Section 7.2, Table 7.2, R2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum required lot frontage of the lot to be severed from 18 meters to 11 meters. Number 3, relief from Section 7.2, Table 7.2, R2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum required lot depth of the lot to be severed from 28 meters to 24.5 meters. Number 4, relief from Section 7.2, Table 7.2, R2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum required rear yard depth of the lot to be retained from 7.5 meters to 5.5 meters. And number 5, relief from section 7.2, table 7.2, R2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum required front yard depth to be retained from 6 meters to 2 meters. The recommended relief meets the 4 tests of a minor variance as set out in section 45(1) of the Planning Act as outlined in the report. And further, that Woodstock City Council advised the Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject lands, subject conditions 1 through 5 outlined in the report.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Tate. Discussion or questions? Seeing none, call a vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, 9C ZN 8-24-6. Application for zone change for 236 Norwich Avenue. Mr. Miller.
Application for zone change ZN 8-2406 in the name of Tefreshi. The subject property is described as Plan 187, Park Lot 9, Plan 216, Park Lot 50C in the city of Woodstock. The property is located, the report says east side, but it is the west side of the corner of Norwich Avenue and Alice Street and is municipally known as 236 Norwich Avenue. The subject lands are designated service commercial in the official plan and are zoned special highway commercial in the city of Woodstock zoning bylaw. The request is to amend the existing special highway commercial zone to include an additional use. The application for zone change proposes to add permitted uses to the C4 46 zone to permit the sale of home decor and furnishings, artwork, specialty artisan foods, and to permit an accessory use of art classes and workshops. Similar to the requested uses in the C4 and C46 zone, they both permit a furniture store, a retail food store, and a recreational building. The permitted retail food store permits the requested artisan food sales, so that won't show up in the zoning bylaw as it's already permitted. As the proposal will permit an efficient use of existing infrastructure, planning or staff are satisfied that the proposed development is consistent with the PPS with respect to land uses within a designated settlement area. Staff are satisfied that the proposal is in keeping with the intent and purpose of the official plan. The proposed additional uses are consistent with the types of uses described for the service commercial designation. The proposed new uses are specialized in nature and cater to the traveling public or are recreation and entertainment uses. Home furnishings are specifically supported in the service commercial designation of the official plan, and the art classes and workshops may be considered to be complementary and comparable to recreation and entertainment uses permitted within the C4 zone. Planning staff are satisfied that the proposal is consistent with the policies of the provincial planning statement and meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan respecting service commercial uses and can be given favorable consideration. It's recommended that the City of Woodstock Council approve the application.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner for this application? Seeing none, looking for a motion. Counselor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the application for lands described as Plan 187, Park Lot 9, Plan 216, Part Lot 50C in the city of Woodstock to amend the text of the C4-46 zone to permit the sales of home decor and furnishings, artwork, and an accessory use of art classes and workshops on the subject lands, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Wismer Van Meer. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, 9D, OP 24-04-8 and ZN 8-24-10 for the Norwich Avenue application. Mr. Miller.
Applications for official plan amendment and zone change, OP 24048, ZN 82410, in the name of Key Change Property Management. The subject lands are described as Plan 48, Part Lots 2 and 3 in the city of Woodstock. The lands are located on the west side of Norwich Avenue between Parkinson Road and Salter Avenue and are municipally known as 394, 400, 408, and 412 Norwich Avenue. The subject lands are currently designated low-density residential in the county's official plan, are proposed to be designated high-density residential. The lands are currently designated residential zone 1, residential 2, residential zone 2, and special residential zone 2 in the city zoning bylaw and are proposed to be rezoned to special residential zone 3. Applications have been received to amend the official plan of the city's zoning bylaw to permit the development of a 32-unit stacked townhouse development. The subject lands contain 4 small dwelling structures. The official plan amendment proposes to redesignate the subject lands from low density to high density residential to facilitate the proposed increase in residential density on the site. The zone change application proposes to rezone the subject lands from special residential type 3. The proposed zoning will facilitate the proposed stacked townhouse development and the requested zone provisions regarding a minimum lot area per dwelling unit, minimum landscaped open space, and to permit limited parking in the required front yard. Planning staff are of the opinion that the subject proposal is consistent with the policies of the PPS, as the development is an efficient use of land and municipal services within a fully serviced settlement area. The development also contributes to housing types and densities required to meet the projected requirements of current and future residents of the city or in the broader regional market area. The proposal is generally consistent with the official plan policies respecting the designation of additional high-density sites. The subject lands have frontage on Norwich Avenue, which is an arterial road, and access will be provided through an existing signalized intersection. No new access is proposed, and the existing entrances will be reduced to the single signalized intersection. The applicants have consolidated 4 existing lots to provide an opportunity for intensification and infill of existing underutilized low-density lands. The subject lands are directly adjacent to a regional shopping area, transit on Norwich Avenue, and are in close proximity to a large city park, the former golf course to the west. Further, although the request is to redesignate to high density, the proposed density of 81 units per hectare is much closer to the maximum density of the medium density designation of 70 units per hectare than it is to the maximum density of the high density designation, which is 150 units per hectare. To reduce the impacts to adjacent lower density residential uses, the applicants are proposing a 3-story structure that will be buffered from adjacent residential uses by parking areas to the south and west of the subject lands. The limited height of the proposed 3-story structure relative to a typical high-density development will provide a gentle transition from the surrounding single-detached dwellings to the adjacent regional commercial uses associated with the Norwich Avenue corridor. The applicants are providing parking spaces in accordance with the minimum standards for the proposed development, and adequate services are available to support the proposal. With respect to the proposed zoning amendment, planning staff are supportive of the applicant's request to establish alternative zone provisions for lot area per dwelling unit, landscaped open space, location of parking area, and established building line. The requested lot area per dwelling unit of 124 square meters per dwelling unit, where the R3 zone requires 150 meters per dwelling unit, and the minimum landscaped open space of 32%, where a minimum of 35% is required, is considered to be adequate because the city-owned amenity space in close proximity to the west and regional commercial node immediately to the east provide additional areas that may be used for amenity and recreation. Additionally, the request to reduce lot area per dwelling unit has become more commonly accepted in multiple proposals in Woodstock in recent years. The reduced lot area is not expected to negatively impact the functioning of the site, as the proposal will provide the required number of parking spaces. The general provisions of the zoning bylaw establish those permissions for the location of parking areas. For residential units without individual driveways, parking is permitted in the interior side yards and rear yards. The applicant is requested to have 1 space located in the front yard. The remainder of the parking, 53 spaces, are located in the rear yard and interior side yard. The space to be located in the front yard will not impact sightlines or adjacent properties, and staff have no objection to the location of 1 space in the front yard. The general provisions of the zoning bylaw sets out established building line provisions, establishing a front yard setback based on the average of adjacent lots. The city's building department has determined that the established building line is 7 meters, and the applicant is proposing a setback of 6.7 meters. Notwithstanding established building line provisions, the minimum front yard depth in the R3 zone is generally 6 meters. And the proposed 6.7 meters exceeds this minimum setback. Further, the reduction from 7 to 6 meters is a minor departure and will not impact conformity with the rest of the streetscape. Through the public consultation process, one letter of concern was received and is included as Plate 4 in the report. The letter of concern identified potential issues over ownership, rent, height, parking, traffic, privacy, garbage, pests, and disruption of services. On Monday during the day, I received one additional call from a resident who was not supportive of the application, but did not provide a specific reason. And at Monday's public meeting, a few residents spoke out against the application. A number of the issues raised relating to grading, drainage, and privacy that the applicant's planner addressed, but I'll speak to as well since I put it in my notes today. Some residents raised concerns about grading and drainage related to the existing wet conditions, particularly in the spring. While this development is not likely to decrease existing drainage issues on adjacent properties, through the site plan process, the city reviews and approves grading plans to ensure that the development does not add any additional surface water to adjacent properties. Residents also raised concerns over privacy from the new development. Although the development is proposed at the same approximate height as any other low density development would be permitted to be built within the zoning bylaw, significant grading is anticipated to take place on the subject lands, including retaining walls, particularly at the rear of the site, which would make the site higher than it is now. To mitigate privacy concerns, the building will be located close to Norwich Avenue, and only parking is proposed where the grading would be most impactful to adjacent properties on Powell Street. Further impacts to privacy can also be addressed by the requirement of fencing and landscaping through the site plan control process. The city's bylaw permits, I think it's 2 meters, so about 6 foot has the maximum height, but that height can be increased through the site plan control process. This office is of the opinion that the proposed amendment to the official plan to accommodate the proposed development of the subject lands generally complies with the relevant policies of the official plan respecting infill, intensification, and high-density residential development. And the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is considered to be appropriate for the proposed development and can be given favorable consideration. As such, this staff recommend that the Council of the City of Woodstock advise County Council that the city supports the application to amend the official plan, file number OP 24048, and that the Council of the City of Woodstock approve in principle the zone change application for file ZN 82410.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Miller? Counselor Tate?
Through the chair to the planner, just a question. So that location, there could be a high rise, correct?
So no, not now and not with what they're proposing. Although the high density designation does anticipate those types of uses, the R3 zone limits it to 3 stories. So 3 stories as high as it could possibly be.
Because from my understanding, previously there was a developer that was accumulating the homes along there, and his plan was 2 high rises. So when I looked at this, it came sort of the same development we have on Riddell Street. So originally the developer had bought all the property there. He was going to put up a high rise. There was a lot of pushback from the neighbors. And they actually built almost exactly the same thing, only it's 2 levels instead of 3, which to me is way better for privacy, instead of the high rise. So I was just wanted to confirm that was the case.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Lauder?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the planner. Mr. Johnson who spoke was concerned about where they would have snow removal placed. Is there anything that will accommodate something like snow removal?
So through the chair, that is something that is, or through the mayor, that is something that is typically looked at through the site plan control process. I believe that the city often, although they consider that snow can be removed off-site and aren't particularly concerned over snow removal locations on most site plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Schadenberg?
Yeah, from the chair through to Mr. Miller, I just wanted to confirm that the exit of this development lines up completely with the intersection across the street for the, what we could call the No Frills Plaza, to create sort of an intersection that was kind of a T intersection before.
So through the mayor, that's accurate. We've actually gone through a few designs before we got to this meeting today to make sure that it does, those entrances do line up with the signalized intersection. And county and city public works and engineering staff have been satisfied with that location.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd just like to reference, Mr. Johnson made a comment about my question to the site plan approval for the 32 units. Just want to confirm, I'm certainly satisfied. I know a resident did reach out to me before, and that's why I asked the question on Monday evening. But want to confirm that what is being presented today is what we're voting on today to generally look at, and this is what's going to be there if council approves it.
Yeah, so typically that is the case. So there's two good mechanisms we have to make sure that this looks like what you approve if you do approve it. The first is site plan. So we make sure that all of the technical details and the aspects you're expecting and look through site plan. But the most important one is probably zoning. So through zoning, we can put in things like, one of the concerns was that this is proposed at 32 units. What's going to stop it from being 40 or 50 units? So often in zoning, and what I anticipate here is what we'll do is we'll actually put in a cap, a maximum number of units, which will be 32 units.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing done, looking for a motion. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. That Woodstock City Council advise County Council that the city supports the application to amend official plan file number OP 24-04-8 submitted by Key Change Property Management for lands legally described as Plan 48, Part Lots 2 and 3, City of Woodstock, to designate the subject lands to high-density residential to facilitate the development of a 32-unit stacked townhouse dwelling subject to the townhouse dwelling building on the subject lands, and further that Woodstock City Council approve in principle the zone change application, file number ZN 8-24-10, submitted by Key Change Property Management for lands legally described as Plan 48, Part Lots 2 and 3 in the City of Woodstock to rezone the lands to Special Residential Zone 3, R3 Special, to facilitate a 32-unit stacked townhouse dwelling building with reduced lot area, reduced landscape open space, amended parking area location, and reduced established building line provisions, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Lauder. Questions or discussion? Sorry, Councillor Leatherborough.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. Thank you to Mr. Scott for coming forward on Monday night. And I certainly appreciate when residents engage in the process, and the planning process is complex to say the least. But I just wanted to make mention that I do find it challenging, or more challenging, to deny or defer planning applications, certainly when the planning department does give it a stamp of approval. So I was doing a little Woodstock history around my area where I live. Councillor Tate had mentioned Riddell Street, so I'm in and around Ingersoll Ave and Wellington Street North. And what once was Beckett's Market, when I moved to Woodstock in 2014, it was a vacant parking lot, and it now has a number of townhouses with both upper level units and lower level units. There's also the Northgate Towers on Admiral Street, which is an 8-story apartment building, and then the old hospital site will be developed soon enough. So more so just wanted to make mention that I understand very valid concerns, and I do understand the difficulty or the task that we have as counselors watching neighborhoods change. So I did just want to make mention, appreciating residents participating, and also that when density comes, it's challenging for neighborhoods and residents living within those neighborhoods.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, 9E. So this is OP 24-12-8, ZN 8-24-22 for 747 Pavey Street, Inc. Mr. Miller, go ahead.
Application for official plan amendment and zone change, OP 24-12-8, ZN 8-24-22, 747 Pavey Street, Inc. The subject lands are described as a part of Park Lots 2 and 3, Plan 187 in the city of Woodstock. The lands are located on the north side of Pavey Street with some frontage on Fife Avenue between Fife Avenue and Norwich Avenue and are municipally known as 747 Pavey Street and 97 Fife Avenue. The subject lands are currently designated low-density residential in the county's official plan and are proposed to be redesignated to a high-density residential. The subject lands are currently zoned residential zone 1 in the city's zoning bylaw and are proposed to be rezoned to special residential zone 3. Applications have been received to amend the official plan in the city zoning bylaw to permit the development of a 52-unit multiple attached dwelling or apartment development consisting of 2 buildings. The subject lands contain a large house that is recently used as a veterinarian's office at 747 Pavey and a single detached dwelling at 97 Fife. The official plan amendment proposes to redesignate the subject lands from low-density residential to high-density residential to facilitate the proposed increase in residential density on the site. The zone change application proposes to rezone the subject lands from residential type 1 to special residential type 3. The proposed zoning will facilitate the proposed multiple attached dwelling or apartment development on the requested zone and the requested zone provisions regarding front lot line, lot area per dwelling unit, minimum parking standard of 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit, including visitor parking, maximum height and reduced interior side yard setback. Planning staff are of the opinion that the subject proposal is consistent with the policies of the PPS as the development is an efficient use of land and municipal services within a fully serviced settlement area. The development also contributes to housing types and densities required to meet the projected requirements of the current and future residents of the city and the broader regional market area. Although the subject lands do not have direct access to an arterial road as identified in the official plans criteria for designating new high-density residential sites, the subject lands are in close proximity to Norwich Avenue and Parkinson Road, which are arterial roads about 100 meters from Norwich Avenue. Further, the proposed density of 85.6 units per hectare and development type of only 4 stories is more similar to medium density development that permit a maximum of 70 units per hectare than they are to high density developments that permit a maximum of 150 units per hectare, similar to the last application. Medium density development policies identify that development will abut arterial or collector roads in a manner that prevents traffic from moving through the site through adjoining low-density residential districts. In staff's opinion, the primary access to Pavey Street provides direct access to Norwich Avenue without impacting adjoining low-density residential districts. Further, the neighborhood is not a typical low-density neighborhood and contains higher-density residential development, large community facilities, and institutional uses, which already likely impact low-density residential traffic. The subject lands are immediately adjacent to institutional uses to the north and multi-unit residential uses to the south. Where the proposal is adjacent to lower density residential uses, larger setbacks have been incorporated into the design and screenings like fences are proposed throughout the design and will be implemented through the site plan control process. The subject lands are immediately adjacent to 2 large schools, College Avenue Secondary School and Oliver Stevens Public School, and are in close proximity to several city-owned parks. Further, the subject lands are within walking distance to many commercial uses to the east on Norwich Avenue. The limited height of the proposed 4-story structure relative to a typical high-density development will provide a gentler transition from the surrounding single detached dwellings and is in character with the surrounding institutional uses and multiple unit residential uses. A parking justification has further provided information identifying that the requested parking is adequate. The site also contains 2 common amenity areas that provide adequate outdoor amenity space for residents of the development. With respect to the zone provisions, with respect to the proposed zoning amendment, planning staff are supportive of the applicant's request to establish alternative zone provisions for lot area per dwelling unit, maximum height, interior side yard width, and location of the front lot line. The requested area per dwelling unit of 116 square meters per unit where there's R3 zone requires 150 square meters per dwelling unit is considered adequate because of the many city-owned parks and public schools in close proximity that may provide additional spaces for amenity and recreation. Additionally, the requested reduced lot area per dwelling unit has become more commonly accepted in multiple proposals in Woodstock in recent years. The reduced lot area is not expected to negatively impact the functioning of the site, and the site plan control process will be implemented to ensure the functionality of additional items like drainage and grading. The maximum height for apartments and multiple attached dwelling houses in the R3 zone is 3 stories, and the applicants are requesting a maximum height of 4 stories. The maximum height provisions in the R3 zone are generally intended to reflect low and medium density residential developments. In this case, the applicants are requesting an additional story to accommodate their proposal, which is at the very low end of a high density residential development at 85.6 units per hectare. Although taller, the proposed structure will not be out of character with the surrounding multi-unit residential and institutional uses and will be buffered from surrounding lower density residential uses. Site-specific zones are requested to identify the minimum interior side yard width and front lot line. Additionally, the city's building department has asked that we establish the site-specific building provision for the front yard setback to avoid potential concerns over established building line setback. Following Monday's public meeting, the applicant's agent has requested that we establish a minimum front yard depth of 8.5 meters to the main building and 7 meters to a porch. Prior to Monday's meeting, the applicants were requesting a setback of 7.5 meters from the main building and 6 meters to the porch. However, following concerns from a resident regarding views, the applicant has determined that they can move the building back 1 meter without impacting other zone provisions or design elements. For council's information, the applicant's agent has determined that the residence of the concerned neighbor is set back approximately 8.75 meters, and if approved, the minimum front yard setback should address the neighbor's concerns. The applicants have also requested that through zoning, the front lot line and minimum interior side yard widths are clarified. The R3 zone establishes slightly different minimum interior side yard widths based on development types. The minimum interior side yard width for multiple attached dwellings in apartments walls without habitable rooms or windows is 3 meters. And the minimum width for apartments is generally 6 meters. This provision is intended to provide privacy to adjacent properties where taller apartments may overlook neighbors. In this case, the 3 meter minimum requested setback will apply to the easterly lot line adjacent to a community facility parking area. Further, the applicants have requested that a site-specific zoning deem the front lot line the frontage on Pavey Street when it comes to identifying yard setbacks. Typically, because there are 2 frontages on public streets, Pavey and Fife, the front lot line would be determined by the shorter lot line abutting a street, which would be Fife Avenue. However, due to the configuration of the subject lands, it is appropriate to deem Pavey Street the front lot line. This office is of the opinion that the proposed amendment to the official plan to accommodate the proposed development on the subject land generally complies with the relevant policies of the official plan respecting infill intensification and high-density residential development, and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is considered appropriate for the proposed development and can be given favorable consideration. As such, staff recommend that the council of the city of Woodstock advise county council that the city supports the application to amend the official plan, application number OP 24128, and that the council of the city of Woodstock approve in principle the zone change application file ZN 82422.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Miller? Councillor Sandberg.
Yeah, from the chair through to the planner, I guess the simple way to ask this question based on the L-shaped section of the building, does it ever get to a point where the farthest parking spot to an apartment building is something that becomes too far away? Is there a minimum distance requirement?
Through the mayor, there's not a minimum distance. It is what they want to propose, and I guess if people want to park there, it's a matter for the building owners.
I guess one would assume also the spots furthest away are probably going to be visiting parking spots anyway. And as I mentioned on Monday at the planning meeting, and I do know that the planner is here again for the project, that I thought it was terrific that when Harris Animal Hospital closed down, they had a plan for that property ASAP, as opposed to letting the property go derelict and waiting 1.5 years or 2 years or 3 years for something to happen there. So I want to compliment the the Harris Animal Hospital and whoever it is that's building the property now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you. Looking for a motion. Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council advise County Council that the city supports the application to amend the official plan, file number OP 24-12-8, submitted by Pavey Street, Inc. for lands legally described as part of Park Lots 2 and 3, Plan 187, City of Woodstock, to redesignate the subject lands to high-density residential to facilitate the development of 52-unit multiple attached dwelling development on the subject lands, and further, that Woodstock City Council approve in principle the zone change application file number ZN 8-24-22 submitted by Pavey Street, Inc. for lands legally described as part of Park Lots 2 and 3, Plan 187 in the City of Woodstock, to rezone the lands to Special Residential Zone 3 R3-SP to facilitate a 52-unit multiple attached dwelling development with site-specific provisions for lot area, height, frontage, side yard, width, and front lot line, and further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder on that? Counselor Schattenberg? Discussion or questions? Counselor Tate?
Through the chair, just a comment. This one, I had a little bit of a problem with. I know you have to approve it because any that we haven't approved, we're losing. So when it has a recommendation to go ahead, it's just, I found this one more difficult because it's right in the middle of residential. I will support the application, but I did have an issue with this one.
Thank you. Anyone else? Actually, I'm going to speak to that, yeah, by initial, when you read it, I-2, 52 units, I was like, wow, you know, that's a lot of units. And until you actually drive by and see the way the positioning, and want to commend the planners and the owner of the property for looking at that and seeing a way to try to make it closer to the industrial commercial area more than the residential, and pulling as much privacy as possible and putting the parking lots where they are in order to provide that privacy for neighborhoods. So I too will be supporting this. But anyone else? With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, consideration of correspondence. 10A, Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council supports the resolution received from the City of Owen Sound, Town of Hanover, and the Municipality of West Gray supporting the request for equitable funding for municipal policing, and further, that this resolution of support be circulated to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Michael Kersner, Solicitor General, Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MPP, Rod Wilkinson, Chief of Police, Woodstock Police Services, Woodstock Police Service Board, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and Rural Ontario Municipal Association.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that? Counselor Tate? Discussion? Would you like to speak to that, Counselor Lauder?
Yes, I will. This resolution is a request for equitable provincial financial relief to all municipal police services in Ontario, as opposed to just those under OPP jurisdiction, as indicated in the resolution. We are all facing similar challenges. Therefore, this request for equitable financial relief to all municipalities, regardless of OPP or local police services, is prudent in order to develop and alleviate the additional funding required to meet the budget increases that are having to be passed on to our local taxpayers. I checked with Chief Wilkinson yesterday, and to date, there has been no indication from the province forthcoming with any funding for municipally owned police services.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Tate?
Just through the chair since I seconded it, fully support the motion that this municipality did. I know it's probably gonna fall on deaf ears, but, they did put a lot of work into it, so the more that can pass it on, is good, but I'm sure it's gonna sit somewhere, unfortunately.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd like to actually add, I echo both counselors' concerns. With the province coming in and covering some of those costs or a significant portion of those cost increase to other municipalities that are policed by the OPP, I certainly hope that we are not forgotten with smaller police forces, and will continue to advocate for our equal funding, especially with the new Police Act and all those financial obligations that fall under that. It is quite a burden, and hopefully the Ontario government actually recognizes that and steps up. But that's for next week at Roma. With that, anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Next up, 10B, Counselor Tate.
Through the chair, that I, Woodstock City Council support the resolution received from Northumberland County supporting protection of agricultural lands and sustainable development, and further that this resolution of support be circulated to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honorable Paul Calandra, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Honorable Rob Black, Minister of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, and Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MPP.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that? Counselor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion, Counselor Tate?
Yeah, this is another one. It's important. So it's not that we don't want to develop the land. It's when we are developing the land that we're not taking the soil that they've had to use to develop the land and dumping it and contaminating the agricultural land and surrounding, and that needs to be paid attention. We are surrounded by fantastic agricultural land, so it does affect us. I think it's been done well here, but other municipalities have an issue, and I think the government should be paying attention. But once again, not sure if they will.
Thank you. As a seconder, would you like to speak to that? Anyone else? I want to echo Counselor Tate. I appreciate this being brought forward. It's something that I never really thought of until I got on council about what they do with all that soil when they clear off, especially in our area of great farmland. A lot of times that soil is sold off and given to other farmers and used elsewhere. But unfortunately, sometimes it is simply brought to the landfill. So this whole motion goes towards making sure that is saved for future farmers that may not have the top grade soil that can take advantage of some of our Oxford County soil when needed. So with that, anyone else before I call the vote? All those in favor? It's none opposed. That is carried. Councillor Lauder, your microphone is on.
Oh, sorry.
No presentations from staff this evening, no mayor's reports, no councillor reports. We do have some department reports. So first up is 14B Engineering, Route 1 Transit Route Revision. Looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Schattenberg.
Motion that Woodstock City Council approve the change to Woodstock Transit Route Number 1, effective Monday, January 27th, 2025.
Seconded by Councillor Tate. Discussion or questions of staff? Seeing none, I'd like Mr. DeHaan to speak to this and just, I think this is a great news story. Another 2.6 kilometers, another 6 stops. Mr. DeHaan?
Your worship, yes. We had a request from, well, the city's growing, as you know, and with that industrial subdivision over on Devonshire that we developed a few years ago and now filling up, we had a request from a number of businesses in there if we could extend the transit service because they were having their workers having to get off at Cardinal and basically walk down Devonshire, which has no sidewalk, and then walk down into the industrial subdivision, which again has no sidewalk either. We took a look at it. That route did have some time available so that we were able to extend it. So we basically pushed it as far as we can. So that's going to go to the most easterly road in the industrial subdivision. That means we'll also pass Woodall Way, which means the employees that are located on that street can also get off, and then it will turn around, come back, and then continue north on Cardinal.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before I call the vote? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Nothing from cultural services, parks and recreation, economic development though. 14E.1. Approval to renew a shared services agreement with the downtown Woodstock Business Improvement Area. Looking for a motion? Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a shared service agreement with the Board of Management, Downtown Woodstock Business Improvement Area, as described in the report.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Tate. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'd just like to add thank you to staff and the whole committee working together and the board to put this together and come to a great agreement, in my opinion. Nothing further. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Leatherborough? Yeah. Next up, 14E.2, extension of build commitment for 428 Universal Road, CWB Holdings. Councillor Schoenberg.
The Woodstock City Council authorized the mayor and clerk to amend the performance requirements of the purchase and sale agreement to provide for the extension of the commitment to construct a building to the end of 2025.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Leatherborough. Discussion or questions of staff? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. 14E3, request for approval to transfer 1319 Batulo Avenue to Oxford County. Looking for a motion? Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the transfer 1319 Petulo Avenue to the County of Oxford, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documents, and that the necessary bylaws be read.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Questions or discussion? Councillor Schoenberg.
Yeah, from the chair through to, I guess, Len Magyar from Economic Development. 1319 Petulo Avenue, is that a water pumping station or what is exactly over there?
Your worship, through to the question, yes, basically what's happened is we have now developed the LEA farm. And as part of the infrastructure, obviously some of it was built for the benefit of the county over the longer term. And basically what you have is the pumping facility there that's now complete. And we're in a position now where we can transfer the ownership of that directly to the county.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Bless you. Next, we're into clerks. 14F1. So this is alternative forms of voting methods for the 2026 municipal and school board election additional information report. Looking for a motion? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. That Woodstock City Council receives the alternative forms of voting method for the 2026 municipal and school board election additional information report as information. And further, that Woodstock City Council adopts hybrid as the voting method for the 2026 municipal and school board election. And further, that the city clerk be directed to bring forward a bylaw to authorize the alternative voting method supported by Woodstock City Council to the next regular meeting.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that? Counselor Leatherborough? Discussion? Counselor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I put a lot of thought into this before this evening and wanted to share that I feel like I have a little bit of unique lived experience when it comes to alternative voting methods. Some of you may know that prior to living here in Woodstock, I lived in a different municipality and I did stand as a candidate in a municipal election. That municipality chose to go with online voting only. And they were one of the 51 municipalities that were victim of a crash on election night. I was not the successful candidate in that election. I lost by 23 votes. Is it perhaps that I lost because of that crash? Maybe. That we'll never be able to tell. There will be no evidence to be able to determine that. In my opinion, having been through that experience, I would suggest that had that municipality gone with both a paper ballot and an online voting option, there would have been less chance of that A, crash occurring, and B, a number of people uncertain if they had cast their votes or unable to cast their vote. So in spite of my negative experience with online voting, I still fully and wholeheartedly support the accessibility and opportunity that it extends to people to vote online. I personally believe that here for Woodstock in 2026 and probably for 2030, the next 2 voting cycles, it would be prudent to offer the hybrid option and then do an evaluation of what method is garnering the most effective results as far as voter turnout, and then a decision can be made, at a future date on what individual or hybrid method might be utilized. So from my own personal lived experience, this would be what I would suggest for the city of Woodstock to consider. And thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you. Seconder, would you like to speak to that? Okay. Anyone else? Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Through the chair, just kind of a general comment to start. During the past election, I was very much in favor of looking at these options. And as we started coming into this, I did start to question it a bit more. I'm not going to lie, the price tag was a little more than I thought it would be, but having a lot of conversations, not only with folks from other municipalities, the deputy clerk, Mr. Bunn, who I am very thankful for, who answered a lot of questions for me this week. So thank you very much for that. But I talked to a lot of community members, and there was definitely a very shared concern of that price, but more of they want to see more options. And for me, I still sit with supporting the hybrid option, because by doing it for one election in 2026, when a SWOT report is done after, and for those who may not know that acronym, it's the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Those are things that you digest and go through. And we have fantastic staff that are very competent, that will do a very good job of dissecting all of that information. Whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 1 election, 2 elections, that is to be determined by the next term of council. But for me, I think that there were a lot of folks that reached out to me when I looked at the statistics, that's a tough word tonight, from AMO from 2022. I was surprised to see that actually internet and phone voting were the highest number at 146 municipalities that use that method. In speaking with Mr. Bunn, the telephone voting method is kind of not maybe being offered as often, maybe not from the vendors, or it's just not the option that presented itself best. But to see how many municipalities are going this way, I support it. I think it's something that's worth, that this municipality, the folks I've spoken to, the large number want to see. And we go back to the drawing board after that election, and I'm very, I have a lot of faith in our staff, and not to say that there aren't risks. Obviously, I know that that's there, and I appreciate that that exists, but I think that the staff did a great job with this report, and have done a great job in answering my questions and helping me come to this decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Shanberg.
Yeah, I guess the question to Mr. Bunn, our deputy clerk. In the previous election, I know there were things like rotating polling stations to retirement homes or wherever along those lines. How would that work as far as a hybrid voting system? Would they still just do a paper ballot the old fashioned way?
Through you, your worship, we are required to attend institutions, they're called, under the Municipal Elections Act. And yes, we would bring an option with us. Likely what I would suggest in this case is giving voters a choice. So in the case of online voting, we would offer some sort of a tablet or a piece of software they could use to vote that method. Alternatively, we would also bring a paper ballot with us and make that offer as well. I think you wouldn't want to disenfranchise any elector based on their choice. So if we're offering it to the general electorate as at large an option, we would certainly bring that with us to the institutions.
Unrelated question, but a follow-up, I guess. In the last election in 2018, there were as many as 50 municipalities who had some sort of a, well, let's just say it's a the extended voting time because of the systems were down. Was that just in the province of Ontario? That seems a significant number.
Through your worship, my understanding is it was 50 municipalities in 2018 for online voting. That was really a mistaken limit that was placed on the bandwidth for the software itself. And I think that's what follow-up investigations had found. And so in those cases, what happened was those municipalities had to extend their voting period, I believe by 24 hours or perhaps a little bit longer following the election, and then the results were tallied. So on election night, no results, of course, were given, and notices went out to electors as best as the communities could, advising of that impact.
And I guess my last question is, of all the people that would vote hybrid or certainly online by internet, of all those people, what would you think the percentage would be of people who don't really represent that vote? In other words, they've had somebody assist them to vote.
Through you, worship, are you asking if somebody used technology to vote for themselves? Is that, I'm sorry.
No technology to vote for somebody else. In other words, you're helping your aunt vote or something like that.
Through your worship, of course, the nature of online voting means that it's an unsupervised environment where people are going to be able to vote. So that would be at their home, their work, wherever the case may be. And so, you know, there is that risk that someone may end up getting help by voting online. Certainly from the municipality's perspective, we would be doing our best to provide public education that would say, come see us. We have trained election staff who are sworn secrecy, who are able to help you. And we would encourage people to come out, and whether or not they want to use their own technology or city provided or vendor provided, we would offer that.
Then specifically, how would the voter receive their so-called PIN number to enter into the computer to vote?
Through your worship, voters receive a voter notification letter. So they come in the mail, usually about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month before the election itself. That'll have a unique PIN in that letter. You'll enter that PIN, and generally speaking, you would also enter in your date of birth. There's also other mechanisms where you can have additional multi-factor authentications added, depending on the municipality. But generally speaking, it's those two pieces of information that are required to then access your ballot.
You did a great job answering my questions. Thanks, Mr. Bunn.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Lauder.
Thank you, and I want to thank staff for this extensive report. It was very well-written. So I still believe traditional paper ballot gives the confidence to the electorate that their vote is secure and counted, otherwise they can be discouraged to vote. There is no proof that online brings out more voters. By offering booths for people who do not have a computer or do not understand the process, by having a person assist them in the booth, while their vote is a loss of secrecy. The secret ballot marked in a secret booth lets the voter make their own choice. No one is forcing them to vote for someone against their will, as can happen with online system. In the case of the tenants not getting online voting login credentials, how updated is the voters list? How often does the Registry of Electors of Ontario update the apartment unit information? Thus, new tenants may not receive the voter information package containing the required credentials. It is reported that multiple landowners would receive multiple login credentials. Who is actually the one voting using the credentials that were supplied? And these were things that I had read in some of the reports that I was looking at. The ON system does not produce an accompanying paper trail, so there is no follow-up as in the paper ballot where a recount can happen. This was a question in one of the municipalities at the candidates that thought that there wasn't, they should have had more votes in that area, and there was no way to check on that. And the election night emergencies, of course, you've spoken to about the 24-hour extension for the voting. And this is some of the reasons I can't support online voting.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Tate?
Yeah, through the chair. Just to start off, I just want to, the ability to vote is the most valuable transaction that a citizen in Canada has because we belong in a democracy. So I've never supported online voting. I never will. I will say that doing the hybrid is the lesser of the evil. Doing a bunch of research, it does prove that online does not improve voter turnout. And I noticed Guelph went to complete online, and the next election they had to go to hybrid. So I understand the thinking behind that. And talking to some experts that have a lot of background in elections, the number one thing is confidentiality, and the other one is the people have to trust the system. Now, I've been through a system where there was fraudulent voting. Now, maybe nobody cares because it happened to me, but I can tell you if it happens to you, you're going to care. So when you look at what's going on in the country, not just our country, but the other ones, there's a high risk of fraudulent voting. Just the other day, I saw in the paper trying to get all my information, but there was a by-election in BC, and they are asking the RCMP to come in because they think there was fraudulent voting with mail-in ballots. So this brings it back again to the mail. I quite often get somebody else's mail. I mean, I know I'm not supposed to open it, so I take it to the neighbor, but who says who does that? So to me, the most valuable thing we have as a right, as a citizen, is to cast your vote. And the public has to be 100% trusting that the system works. Because what happens is, what I went through, anybody that was there that wasn't on they witnessed the fraudulent, they won't vote in a system like that ever again. So it causes people not to vote. So that is my big concern. And I will say, as Councillor Wisner Van Meer pointed out, I did have comments from the public, and it was 50-50. And I talked to somebody else, and they said, probably nobody cares which way you go. And I said, like this as a municipality, and I understand that, but I know from going through it, you have to trust the system. And the people running have to trust the system, and the people casting their ballot has to trust the system. So I cannot support it. I do appreciate, though, that the motion is both, because as I said, when Guelph did it, they went back and they had to do hybrid. So we'll see how it goes. I just think when you look at what's going on, there's such a high risk of fraudulent voting in every level. You have to be so careful, so careful. So that's it. That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, then I'd certainly like to add, it's no secret, I've been in favor of online voting since I became a counselor. I've made the motion a couple of times without success. Though I will say that with the most recent data and everything else, I was a little dissuaded that online voting doesn't necessarily mean we'll have more votes. It certainly brings a lot more convenience. I think it brings it to the 20th century of being able to do it. And just on Tuesday, went to visit my grandfather in the hospital. He turned 94 years old while he was in there. And as always, we have talk about politics and what's going on. He's probably my biggest fan. He loves talking politics. And when we got talking about, you know, this motion coming forward, he is simply blown away that he could be laying in a hospital bed and still be able to count his vote. And that sits to that definite convenience factor of helping those that want to vote but simply can't get to a polling station. Also, I'm going to support a hybrid option. I do think that as a transition goes, possibly, let's look at over the next election or two, what brings the most people out. Some of the stats I do have from 2006, we had a 35.04% turnout rate. 2010 was 33.92, 2014 was 31.04, 2018 was 31.4, but in 2022 it dropped even again to 27.74. So we see the general public are voting less and less. So we have to do everything we can to try to make it a little more convenient for the general public. And I mean, once upon a time, I remember being hesitant about doing my online banking, and now we all take it for granted. It's secure and it's just the normal way, which I believe is going to be the trend moving forward through all different elections. But that's it for right now. Anyone else before I call the vote? Councillor Leatherborough.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I get a recorded vote, please? Thank you.
So if nobody else, I'll turn it over. Mr. Bunn, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We will start with Councillor Leatherborough,
Yes.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
Councillor Schattenberg,
No.
Councillor Tate,
No.
Councillor Wisemer Van Meer,
Yes.
Mayor Accioni,
Yes.
Councillor Lauder,
No.
motion passes.
Thank you. And I'd like to say a big thank you to all the staff. There's, you know, been a lot of questions thrown around this last week of, you know, different stats and everything else and looking over previous reports and just a really big change here coming to the city of Woodstock and to residents. And thank you to staff for providing us the information. They requested it. Next up, 14F.2 is acting mayor appointment. Councillor Martin?
I'll start off with the one-year term, that Woodstock City Council establish a term for the office of acting mayor to be January 17th, 2025 through to January 15th, 2026. And further, that Woodstock City Council select an acting mayor and the term of office at the regular meeting of council held on January 15th, 2026.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lauder? Discussion or questions? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Next up, I guess the deputy clerk will do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll now proceed with the election of the acting mayor. Each member of council is entitled to one vote. CAO David Creary will draw a name from a ballot box in the event of a tie. I will now accept nominations in writing duly moved and seconded for the position of acting mayor. Are there any further nominations before we proceed? Okay. The nomination is that Councillor Wiseman Vermeer be nominated as acting mayor. And since we only have one, we'll proceed right to a vote. So the final motion will be that Councillor Wiseman Vermeer be appointed as acting mayor for the term of January 17th, 2025 through to January 15th, 2026. All those in favor? The motion is carried.
Thank you. Before we move along, I just want to say thank you to Councillor Leatherborough for always being willing to step in anytime I was unavailable or double booked, as sometimes it landed. So thank you very much for that. And I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Wismer Van Meer for being willing to stand for this and help anytime in the future, which I'm sure you will. So thank you. Brings us to 14F.3, amendments to Municipal Code, Chapter 36, Board of Management Improvement Areas. Looking for a motion? Councillor Tate?
I'll move that Woodstock City Council refer the amended Municipal Code, Chapter 36 to the Bylaws section of the meeting.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Again, thank very much to the board for all their work and putting that together, as well as staff. Nothing from the CIO's office, Human Resources, but we do have Fire Services this evening. 14I.1 Woodstock Fire Protection Grant 2024 to 2025. Would you like to speak to this before I look for a motion? Or,
I can leave it there. I believe the report's quite
all right,
detailed.
well, I'll look for a motion on the floor. Councillor Leatherborough,
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council authorizes the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary transfer payment agreement between the city of Woodstock and the province of Ontario in relation to the fire protection grant.
thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion or questions of the chief? Always eager and willing to chat with us. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Maybe, oh, there we go. Through the chair to Chief Sliker, if you could maybe just explain, I know the report was very thorough, but just a quick snapshot of what this grant is going to provide for our local fire services.
Your worship, through to Councillor Wismer Van Meer. So the amount that we were able to receive will be putting towards additional bunker gear, the suits that our firefighters wear while they're on scene. As part of our cancer reducing process that we have, we try to provide at least 2 sets to each of our firefighters so that in the process of performing their duties, if a set becomes contaminated, when they're back at the station, they're able to remove it, put it in for cleaning, but have a secondary set ready, clean, and available to continue on with their shift. This funding will allow us to finally meet with the last of our firefighters that we are currently renting a second set of gear for. We'll be able to purchase it, own it within ourselves, and have full control over that.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Next up, also for the fire services, is sole source approval for radio station mobile portable purchase. Looking for a motion on the floor. Counselor Lauder?
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve sole sourcing project FIR 00032 radio replacement station mobile portable to 59 Solutions for the purchase price of $676,534, including applicable taxes.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder? Counselor Martin? Questions or discussion? Counselor Martin?
Yeah, just for transparency for those at home, this was an item that was budgeted in our capital budget that we've already been through that process. This is not new money that we're approving here for this purchase. This is something we've already discussed and gone through, and it's not a new spend. Do you want to just clarify that for folks?
Your worship, through to Councillor Martin. Correct. This was a project that was approved as part of the 2025 capital budget in last year. We're just finalizing the purchase.
Last year, yeah, what, 16 days ago. Would you also mind explaining to the public the process? I found this quite interesting, the scoring you did and everything else. Do you mind just simplifying that and let everybody know what's needed to be successful?
Absolutely. Your worship, through the question, with this type of equipment, it's very specific as to how we use it and the ways and the equipment that we're wearing while we're using it. So through this process, we established, similar to what we did with our SCBA purchase last year, our self-contained breathing apparatus, we invited vendors to come in and present the equipment that they had and do a presentation to the users who are going to be using this. Although I'm the chief of the department, I don't carry this equipment on the fire ground or utilize it there. So we bring the members in, they are to partake in the presentation, and then they're provided with pieces of the equipment to test. Now, people will kind of wonder with a radio, well, how much are you testing it? For this aspect of it, we do look at how easy it is to operate it with gloves on, with the equipment on while they're working in a low visibility environment. Is it clear? Is it for visual ability to read the monitors and all the screens with that? Does it have the ability to connect or grow with the equipment that we already have within the department? And so through that process, they make their assessments, they go through, they score things on a test, and then we accumulate those reports from the members who participate. And based on those scores, we select not only the specific piece of equipment, but the vendor that was selected through that process as well.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Worship.
Next up from Public Works, 14J.1 Waste Contract Update. Looking for a motion? Counselor Schanberg.
The Woodstock City Council approves the continuation of curbside waste collection services and the introduction of residential curbside organics collection effective early 2026 at a cost equal to or lower than the cost included in the recent county waste collection services tender, and that the county council be advised. And further, that city staff be directed to work with county staff to update and revise the waste management agreement with the County of Oxford.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder on the motion? Counselor Martin. Discussion or questions? Counselor Schanberg.
Yeah, from the chair through to Dan Locke from the Works Department, if you could just sort of explain what all this means to the citizens.
Thank you, through your worship, to the council's question. So the report in front of you is to have council endorse the continuation of waste collection, curbside collection. and the addition of organics, green bin collection curbside. It is one of the things that I think we've heard over the certainly last few years that green bins or organic collection in the city is something that's been highly desired. So it's good to see that coming forward and happening now. But really what's in front of you, because a lot of those decisions were made at the county level, but what's in front of you is really that this council endorses our staff performing that work as part of that contract.
As a follow-up there for Mr. Locke, what happens to our blue bins and our reduce, reuse, recycle?
Thank you. Through you, your worship, to the councilor's question. So again, there was a report in June last year that I brought forward that highlighted that the producer responsibilities mandated through the province has a governing body called CMO that looks after that on their behalf, and the blue bin collection will now be handled through them, through a private contractor. So we're waiting some notification from the contractor and CMO on what that collection looks like. We don't have that information at this point in time, but we do not believe that these two waste streams will align for, I'll say, a curbs collection day. As we're doing a 6-day cycle, which was decided at council, I don't believe that we'll have, the same day that you'll be setting it out. So you'll be relying on things like calendars. We'll be doing a lot of education to make sure that the residents have, tools that help them understand when they're setting things out.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Mr. Locke, I know that you just said that a lot of this happened at the county, but I really want to give you and your staff a lot of credit because this didn't just happen at the county. There have been extensive conversations. There has been a lot of discussion. There are so many variables in black bag and organics and recycling. Some we know the answers to, some we don't. Some were very expensive, some were not. And so the open dialogue that has happened between the city and the county truly has been what got us to this point today, to be able to be able to implement organics collection in Woodstock and eventually throughout Oxford County. So my appreciation to you, to your staff, to the leadership in getting us to this point, to bringing organics to Woodstock. It's very exciting.
I'd like to just quickly echo that as well, being one as a county councillor myself, the amount of going back and forth, the cooperation between city and county staff, full credit to county as well, that these are big decisions and there are going to be some changes. There's no question to the general public. It's the downside, in my opinion, is the calendar. We're going to have to figure that out. The upside is we're finally going to get our organics here in the city of Woodstock. So there's an upside for sure. Councillor Tate.
Yeah, just through the chair, I just want to echo that. And to the director, I had a bunch of questions and he did say, you can call my phone anytime and I'll answer the questions. Much appreciated. And just a clarification, because I was quoted incorrect in the paper, but I wasn't against the green boxes in the urban areas. It was in the rural, because all the rural people did not want them. So I'm fine with it in the urban. That was not an issue. It was the rural.
Councillor Schattenberg.
Maybe a trick question for you, Mr. Locke, but what's the end result for the organics as they get picked up? What do they eventually become?
So the organics, and this is a bigger question, but through your worship, the organics will be collected. We'll take them to Salford, where there's going to be transferred to a processor, and that processor has different uses for them. One thing they turn it into is renewable natural gas, and it gets put into the Enbridge pipeline. other uses that there are, for that. I know we went on a trip and you probably remember as many as I do. But there's different uses for the products and they maximize as much of it, out of that plan as they can. So I think the good news is that it gets to, a better spot. It gets out of the waste stream and gets out of the landfill is the really good news part.
I'll just say anybody that went on that tour is definitely gonna remember the smell. It's something you'll never forget. Anyone else? Counselor Leatherborough.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Locke. Thank you for the report. And I'm not sure if you'll have the answer right now, but I actually received quite a few emails of people just sharing in the excitement about organics. Do you foresee much changing with the yard waste depot? I'll leave it there.
Through your worship of the council's question, no, there should be no impacts to the yard waste depot. The organics program, as it'll be set out, we'll be going through and educating on all of the program details. So I don't really want to get into that here tonight, but I do not see any impacts to the yard waste side of things.
That was one of my major concerns going through the process as well. So, anyone else? With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That is carried. Welcome, organics. Nothing from IT this evening. We do have special committee advisory task force reports. So 15A is reprioritization of the Woodstock Art Gallery's 5-year strategic plan. No, we don't. I'm sorry, that was removed. My apologies. Just wasn't removed from my sheet. So that brings us to Community Grants Policy GA 003 review. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council adopt Community Grants Policy GA 003 as amended, and further that staff be directed to update the community grants application form per the policy's amendments.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that? Counselor Tate, discussion or questions? Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Just a general comment. Thank you to the committee for this work. This isn't an easy task to do. I mean, handing out dollars when you have all these asks coming to you and deciding who that's going to go to is a challenge in itself. Having not been updated since 2013, obviously there was a lot of things that needed to be considered. So a big thank you to all of the folks involved in getting this updated. But a couple of things that I'm really happy to see is that it's only one successful application per calendar year. I think that allows us to be able to support more organizations within our community. There's so many that are deserving of the dollars. It's hard to say who does and who doesn't, but being able to have that in there, I think is great. And also putting some onus and some responsibility back on those receiving the funds and making it mandatory that they have to outline how the funding was spent. I think that's crucial. Being an individual that works in not-for-profit myself, that is something that all not-for-profits should be doing anyways, but being able to report that back, I think, is extremely important in this aspect. So again, thank you to the staff and to the committee for doing this work.
Thank you. Counselor Tate.
Through the chair, I agree, and I think it is really important that it comes back because I think it also brings awareness to the people that got the grant. So anytime it can be in the public, because all these organizations need funds. So I think it's beneficial to everybody. And also, as I've always said, this is a very difficult job to do, and I applaud everybody on that committee because it's got to be tough.
Thank you. Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. I also echo Councillor Wismer Van Meer's comments. I've sat on that committee a few times, and yes, it is very difficult. And I just think that these amendments are very good, and I think it's just an all-over improvement that will be easier to maybe make a few decisions So thank you for all the work that's gone into this.
Anyone else? Counselor Leatherborough.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely support this revision and acknowledging all the hard work. And I just wanted to mention that Cynthia is on the call and she's been a great addition to the Woodstock Accessibility Advisory Committee. So no questions for her tonight, but I wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, it's the first thing I had written down. Thank you, Cynthia, for being here and being willing to accept questions. I guess the report's so good that there isn't any. But I want to say thank you to you and as well as all the committee and all the committees I've sat on. This is by far, in my opinion, the most difficult one I've ever sat through on a regular basis of trying to make those decisions. So thank you to you and the committee for your work. And I also strongly agree with all the revisions made. And I think having that accountability piece is important.
You're welcome.
Anyone else before I call the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Cynthia. Now I am gonna back up a wee bit. I am being told by the deputy clerk that we can make the motion on 15A. It was just a delegation that was canceled. So I am looking for a motion on the floor for the Woodstock Art Gallery 5-year strategic plan. Councillor Tate.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council accepts the report regarding the Woodstock Art Gallery 5-year strategic plan 2021-2026 reprioritization as information.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Lauder. Discussion. Councillor Tate.
Just a comment. Mary Reed is a very valuable position with us, a staff member, and she always does a fantastic job. So I just want to recognize all the work that she does.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lauder.
I too want to recognize what the work that Mary does, and I sat through this update in strategic planning, and we had a wonderful evening of just sharing different ideas, and I think this is a good strategic plan addition to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd also like to say a big thank you to Ms. Reed, because again, everything she's always added to the art gallery has been so thorough and important to make that location thrive. And thinking of her and her family situation that keeps her away from us tonight. So with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Next up, we have a notice of motion. Councillor Martin.
The notice of motion is as follows. Whereas speeding, distracted driving, and impaired driving are among the leading causes of driving-related collisions, injuries, and fatalities in Ontario, and whereas municipalities are called upon to modify driver behavior through expensive infrastructure and even more expensive policing, and whereas infrastructure and policing are inherently limited to their effectiveness at reducing speed and distracted driving and entirely ineffective at reducing impaired driving, therefore be it resolved that the City of Woodstock calls on the province and the federal governments to do everything in their power to limit speeding, distracted driving, and impaired driving, and thereby reducing collisions, injuries, and fatalities in our communities. And that the City of Woodstock specifically requests that the Government of Ontario take action to implement the Rural Road Safety Program that Good Roads has committed to lead, which will allow Ontario's rural municipalities to make the crucial investments needed to reduce the number of people being killed and seriously injured on Ontario's rural roads, and that the City of Woodstock staff work with Oxford County and all Oxford Oxford municipalities on the feasibility of implementing a long-term Vision Zero policy and the Good Roads Rural Road Safety Strategy across all of Oxford, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Ontario Premier, Ontario Minister of Transportation, Ontario Minister of Infrastructure, Ontario Minister of Agriculture, Ontario Minister of Rural Affairs, Ontario Associate Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response, and Ontario Minister of Health, and that this resolution be circulated to all Oxford Police Service Boards, Safe and Well Oxford, Good Roads, and all municipalities in Ontario requesting their support.
Thank you. There's no further action on this motion tonight. We will look at this in our first meeting in February. So thank you. No new business that I'm familiar with, so that brings us to draft bylaws. Councillor Schattenberg.
Moved by Councillor Schattenberg, seconded by Councillor Tate, that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading. 9726-25, a bylaw to amend the City of Woodstock Municipal Code, Chapter 36, Board of Management Improvement Areas. 9727-25, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended ZN 8-24-06 for 236 Norwich Ave. 9728-25, a bylaw to provide for the transfer of certain lands from the City of Woodstock to the County of Oxford.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, those are carried. Councillor Schattenberg?
Yeah, moved by Councillor Schattenberg, seconded by Councillor Lauder, that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading. 9726-25, 9727-25, 9728-25.
Just question on the seconder on the motion. It was Councillor Lauder for the first one as well. Who moved the first one?
Tate for the first one.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Why,
about
do
that.
I sound that ill?
I wouldn't say that. I usually write it down and this time I didn't, so of course I was caught. Last chance, any questions or concerns with those? All those in favor? That is carried. And that brings us to questions and addresses by members of council. And tonight, we're going to start with Councillor Leatherborough.
Happy New Year, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I had two things that I wanted to comment on. First of all is the Recreation and Leisure Fair. A couple of changes coming this year. It is Sunday, March 2nd, which is coming up. It is at the Oxford Auditorium this year, not at Gough Hall. It'll be from 1 till 4 p.m. We met on Tuesday evening, and at that point, there were about 41 vendors. But there is still room for a few more. There is the opportunity for an 8-foot space or a double wide, not the right, double wide 16-foot space. You can be a for-profit, not-for-profit, as long as you're dealing with health and wellness, recreation and leisure in Woodstock. You're actually, they're taking outside of Woodstock as well. Welcome to be a vendor. And then attendance for that event is free to the public. There will be a concession stand, there will be demonstrations, there will be music. Certainly a great afternoon for all to take in. The second thing I wanted to mention is that there are probably a whole lot of people at Queen's Park right now licking stamps to put on a $200 check that's going to come out in the mail in the next few days. There are a lot of people in Woodstock that will need that $200 check to make ends meet. I fully recognize that. But there are some people who it might not make a difference to their bank balance or to their checkbook. And so I would encourage people to consider donating that $200 check to the charity of their choice. There are so many social needs in our community that I think that it's the opportunity to pay it forward, for example, and I'll leave it at that. But I think it's an opportunity to take something that maybe a lot of people weren't expecting and won't be needing in their personal bank account and do something fantastic with it in our community.
Thank you. Really like that. Councillor Tate.
Yeah, I had a message from Unifor. They're doing their International Women's Day on March 8th this year, and it's gonna be on a Saturday. So, tickets are $30. I already have my table. I know they've got, a number of tables already reserved, so if you want a ticket, you should get a hold of them and get down there. It's a great, fundraiser for women that are in need. I had, wanted to shout out to the water department and your staff. I don't know if most residents know, but they pay attention to water meters, and they saw mine was double what it usually is. So they called me, and I did have something running that needed to be shut off, and I got my water bill yesterday and it was double. So they do that for everybody in the municipality. Quite often it's a toilet running. Mine was humidifier, but that is a great service that they offer to the residents at no charge. So they pay attention, so you don't end up paying too much. And also Teresa Gdansky from the engineering department. I had somebody contact me a last minute thing. They wanted to get a bin for out front of the business on Dundas, and they were worried that they put it in so late. Teresa was on it as soon as in the morning and had it all done. They picked up their permit the next morning and they were thrilled. So thank you very much. Another wanted to comment. First, good news. Counselor Wismer Van Meer, her father is 80 today. So I thought it was very fitting that she was the deputy, or sorry, acting mayor. I'm sure you know this, but I think a third party is always good for you to know, but your dad is very proud of you. So I hope this made his, when he finds out, I hope it makes his day. Because I think it's important that you know that, even though I'm sure you feel it. He looks like he's about 65, but he is always been involved in the community, as the entire family has. And we used to go to the market because of the chocolate. So he was the best chocolate maker you could ever imagine. Way better than Rio Thompson's. I don't know anybody went to Stratford when they could have got it here. So just on that note, condolences. We've had a rough month or so. Dan McNamara, Bill Ransom. Most people know Dan and the contribution that he's made to the community, because if you know Dan, everybody knows Dan. Bill Ransom was very quiet, but he did all kinds of volunteering at the Restore. And as we know, the Restore is for the Habitat for Humanity, and it's for people in need of houses. And he just laid down one day and he passed away. Fantastic man. And of course, we had Brian Cura. His wife sits on one of our advisory committees. They've always been involved in the community. Brian actually ran for mayor one year because he was concerned what was going on. And I had a conversation with Josh Pember the other day, and we were talking about how lucky we are to live in this community and the people that are here and the contributions they've made. And I remembered all the work that his grandfather did. So if you weren't around at the time, he was a counselor for many years, him and Phil Poole, another counselor. I was lucky enough to sit with Phil Poole. And they would drive around the city, and their whole issue was what would make the community better. And I swear he was driving around every day. And it's people like that that make this community, and these people that have passed away. So hopefully the younger generation picks it up, because that's what makes us what we are. That's it.
Thank you. Counselor Schadenberg.
Yeah, just one sports item to mention. The Ontario Curling Championships are in Cobourg, January 19th to 26th, which is next week. The reason I'm talking about the fact that it's in Cobourg, there's two Woodstock Curling Club teams representing the city. Mark Keane on the men's side, he's actually a former provincial champion. In fact, when he won, I think he was actually in Dorchester, so he won his Ontario Championship very close by. And the other team is Holly Duncan. Now, I know Mr. Mazur's behind me over here. Just want to confirm that Rachel Strybosch is not on the team this year.
She's currently enjoying a brand new baby, but she will be returning.
Yes, Rachel Strybosch is mat leave. I think she just had a child about 2-3 weeks ago, according to Facebook and whatnot. So, but Holly Duncan's team still represents the Woodstock Curling Club. And of course, so does Mark Keene's, and they're at the Ontario Championships next week.
Well, good luck. And Acting Mayor Wismer Van Meer.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to congratulate former Woodstock Fire Chief Scott Tagler. He was just appointed interim fire chief in the town of Tillsonburg. I was really surprised to see that come across my Facebook feed the other day, and I was like, so I sent Scott a text yesterday, and I was like, this is kind of surprising news to me. So, yeah, it's great to see him back in there again doing that. And it obviously is interim, but congratulations to Scott. And hopefully he enjoys that time. And yes, happy birthday to my dad. I haven't even talked to him yet today, so maybe I'll be able to at least text him or something before I leave for today. But yes, happy birthday, Dad.
Yes, happy birthday from all of us. How's that? First off, I want to say I really like that pay it forward. I really, that's off. I like that one a lot, and that's absolutely what I'll be doing if I get a check. I want to bring attention to the WOW magazine, our Woodstock magazine, of course. Make sure you keep it handy. There's so much great information in that magazine, and it seems that more and more people are just finding out about it, and they seem to be getting lots of comments on it. So keep it handy, take note of it, set it aside, and always reference it, because the team does a great job. And I want to say thank you to all staff, not just put the WOW magazine together, not just water department, but absolutely everybody, especially over the Christmas holidays. The amount of comments I get at different events over the holidays was simply amazing. And it's because of our staff and the attention to detail. And it's called out quite often. Unfortunately, it just simply can't get to everybody and find out exact names. So please pass it on that we really love what our staff are doing here in the city of Woodstock. Of course, we have Roma next week, which is Rural Ontario Municipal Association. We're going to be having meetings. We have 5 meetings, at least 5 meetings set aside with ministers, different departments, to sit down and talk about a few concerns and things we want to talk about here, and continue to advocate for everything and everyone here in the city of Woodstock. And I want to thank our community partners over at County of Oxford, working together and trying to make the biggest presence as possible in doing that. Also, just a quick condolences to everyone that is going through something with family. It does seem that we're in another bad rash, and every single day I'm hearing about somebody else, others sick or passing away. And it's another funeral, of course, tomorrow for Dan, if we'll be attending. But I think just going to visit my grandfather so much at the Woodstock Hospital of the last couple of weeks, and a big thank you to the Woodstock Hospital's staff. He's alert. He turned 94 years old while in there. And man, oh man, he can't say enough about the staff taking care of him. And that means a lot from somebody that loves his grandpa so much, and he's being taken care of. So thank you to everybody that are taking care of others, because we all need somebody. And with that, I'm gonna look for a motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tate.
Now that you say that, and you're on the hospital board, did you just want to congratulate Mr. Lang on his report, the accreditation, if you want to do that?
Yeah, we certainly can. As mentioned, Mr. Lang, the president of the Woodstock Hospital, was just awarded with recognition. I don't have the exact verbiage here in front of me, but it is definitely recognized not just by people attending, but it's recognized amongst his peers as well, that the service at the Woodstock Hospital is top notch in Ontario, period. Yeah, thank you for that. Yep. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Tate, second by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. See you in February.